why is it that some fake ads work so well?
The big learning point for everyone that is basically who is listening here.
The reality is, I said, like 99% of the time you're failing. It's incredible. Like they are winning, and I don't see a world where they're not going to continue to win.
Oh my God.
Well, first of all, AI is like electricity. And what I mean by that is it's electricity in the late 19th century. Maybe people were scared of it, but at the end of the day, it's here to stay. And if your mindset is to kind of resist it, I think you are going to be swept up by that tidal wave. You know, you'd get a featuring on the App Store and you could get 1 million downloads in a day. We have an Angry Birds community. You know, when we've done not so great things with AI creative, they will call us out on it and they will shame us.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good one.
You touched points that I never heard about.
If your career were a movie, what would the title be? The Hangover?
One of the best movies of all time. Hello, Luis.
Hey, Amit. How you doing?
I'm great. So my guest today is Luis de la Cámara.
Yeah, good pronunciation.
I said it well. So, Luis, I will try to provide his resume. Let me know if I make a mistake. But Luis started at EA. Then he worked at 2K, Gameloft, Outplay.
King,
Outplay.
Yeah.
I saw several other companies.
Virtually Live, then Generic Games Genjoy.
And then Scopely.
We got acquired by Scopely,
Yeah.
worked for Scopely, and now Rovio for 4 years.
Rovio leading the marketing there, which is one of the most famous brands and games in the world. Yeah. So first of all, Luis, thank you for being here, and we would love to hear your personal story, how you got into games, and that's it.
Yeah, great, thanks. First of all, bienvenido a España, or benvingut. I think we're in Catalonia, so I'm from Madrid, but came up here to Barcelona to have you guys a conversation with you guys. Like it's been 20 years. So yeah, I'm starting to feel...
You're one of the OGs.
I've been 20 years in gaming. To be honest, there's a lot of people I've met along the way that have been there much, much longer. And some people are still very dedicated to the games industry. So I think there's a lot of people that... it's almost like a hobby, a career hobby for a lot of people. It's funny, I actually got into gaming kind of by chance. So I started studying political science in the university in Spain. Traveled most of my life. My parents were diplomats, etc. So kind of the closest thing to international relations that exists in Spain was political science. Unfortunately, in Spain, if you study political science, your career opportunities are very slim. In other countries, it's like very prestigious, but in Spain, it's you end up a professor, or you end up in politics, or you end up as a civil servant. So there's not too many options there. So a couple of years in, I decided to pivot to business and business administration, international business. And with business, I tried all sorts of things: finance, commerce, different types of, let's call them, different experiences, work experiences throughout my university years. And as I was approaching the end of the university, I was like, okay, none of those really make me happy. None of them really motivate me. So where should I go? What should I do? A lot of people in their early 20s are thinking that, right? Especially as they come close and to the end of their university career. So I was thinking which classes I enjoy the most, marketing. So I was like, all right, I have no marketing experience, but why not? Let's try. And I just, carpet bombed, my CV across all sorts of like entry jobs. People say it's hard to get a job nowadays. It was also hard back then, at least in Spain, if you didn't have any real relevant experience. And, one of them was EA, Electronic Arts. I didn't think I was going to get the job there. And it's actually funny. I actually had a small car accident on my way to the interview.
Oh my God.
And so I was very late to the interview. And, the HR person was like, this guy, he's like super late. What does he do? Why is he, why like these young kids nowadays, like can't trust them or anything. Exactly. Right. And I was like, look, I'm really sorry. I had a car accident. So her attitude changed. She's like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, it was just I was trying to park and the person hit the brakes or whatever before I could. But anyways, the interview went really well. I think a lot of it is, I am half Spanish. And so this was for the Spanish market. So it was the EA office in Madrid to do sort of marketing, like product marketing for the Spanish market. And the fact that I'm half American and I'm bilingual, I think helped a lot, to be fair. Anyways, I love the job. Had a great experience, learned a ton from the folks that I worked with. I'm still in touch with some of them, really kind of taught me a lot. And Wasn't able to continue in games, but I wanted to. Ended up working at an events agency on a Red Bull account. Did another gig somewhere else, and then by chance, 2K through a recruiter reached out to me because they were looking for a product manager for the Spanish market. And I got into 2K, did 3 years in Madrid, ended up going to London, working on the NBA 2K franchise. It was awesome. So spent 5 years working in console gaming, and then 2013 pivoted to mobile gaming, and I've been in mobile free-to-play basically almost since the beginning of the mobile free-to-play wave.
How do you think this mobile game marketing has been changing in the last, 15 years? Because
a lot.
you saw it all.
Yeah, a lot. It's changed a bunch. So, it's actually funny. Like, one of the reasons I actually got into marketing, like when I looked at finance and I looked at the other stuff, I was like, yeah, I'm okay at math, but I really like the creative side of things. I like the human side of things. And so marketing was like more creative. It was more about like empathy, understanding customers, understand. And it was less, let's call it data driven. It was less math focused. Nowadays, like, it's like, well, it turns out you have to be pretty good at numbers if you want to work in marketing. But, to be honest, you have to have, you have to use both sides of your brain in marketing. And so, but what has changed a lot is that in mobile specifically, like Gameloft was my first experience in mobile free to play. I did a little bit of stuff at 2K, but we didn't really understand what we were doing. But with mobile back then, it was all about featuring. So it was featuring and then partnerships with like OEMs and things like that. So, partnerships with Samsung, partnerships with Telefonica, whatever, and then eventually with the partnerships with Apple and Google on their stores. And you'd get a featuring on the App Store, and you could get 1 million downloads in a day, like for free in a way, right? So we spent so much time on that relationship building, on working with the product teams, on trying to find like what are the next sort of features that we can build into a game to get it to sell like a great sort of narrative, both to our community, our player community, but also to the app stores, etc. And little by little, this thing called UA started to pop up. At first, comparatively speaking to the scale that you could get through organic was small, but it started to build up. And I would say around the 2015, 2016 era, it started to really kind of shift the other way. And, up until very recently, it's almost all been UA. So, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And one of the things, Rovio, we have the Angry Birds franchise, a lot of games that have been running for a long time. I think everyone, including me, played them really millions of hours, and everyone knows them. Can you tell us a bit how it is like to work on a game that have been running so well known for such a long time and keep it moving and bringing new users and all of the new efforts?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think when we started, again, because I've been in mobile since 2013, at the time, no one really thought those games were going to be sort of evergreen, everlasting games. I mean, if you think about it today, Candy Crush is still massive, Clash of Clans is still massive, Angry Birds, it's still fundamentally what drives our business. And, at the time, we sort of had this console mentality where, you'd release a game, try to, get as much scale as you could, and then you would expect it to eventually die out, and then you'd either like try to create a sequel or create a new game, etc. And it turns out that some of these games have been really successful for 12, sometimes maybe even 15 years. And so who knows if they'll last another 10, 20, 30 years. We don't know where like the horizon is for some of these games. And I think there's a little bit of, especially as you come in to a company that has these existing games and these existing franchises, it's quite interesting because you have this wealth of historical data, but then a lot of new people that have come in and have their own view. You have your own experience from the other companies you've worked at, but also you have a responsibility, to take care of what you have, right? And there's already a set level of players that have certain level of expectations. And then the IP itself is very important. And one of the things that we say at Rovio is that, we are custodians of the IP. So hopefully our games, our free-to-play games that we have today will last, another 10 years or maybe another 20 years. But more importantly is that the brand itself will hopefully last another 100 years, 200 years. If you look at Disney, for example, I don't know how old Mickey Mouse is, or DC with Superman, the Avengers with Marvel, etc. These are IPs that have lasted multi decades, and yes, there's lots of successful products, movies or games, etc. But at the end of the day, what really sort of lasts forever is the IP. So we have a very big responsibility, but we're trying to balance that in a world of performance, right? So it's
this is the part I assume that is very hard because it's not
it's super hard.
classic. Let's call it mobile games marketing. When you have a game, brand is important, but not that much. Like I'm taking
generally speaking,
exactly. And you have very strong, media buying, user acquisition channels. Here, it's something completely different.
Yeah, so it's it depends on the IP and sort of how you run your IP. So now that we've been part of Sega for the last couple of years, we're privileged to work, for example, with Sonic the Hedgehog as an IP. We're making a game under that IP. They're very strict on how they control their IP. They have, and they come from a console background. So also the way you make console games, the way you market console games is extremely different than how you do that in free-to-play mobile, right? And so, that's an interesting space where we're trying to adapt how we work to a very structured, very sort of, let's say, rigid process that they have. And that's on purpose because they very much want to take care of their IP, and they've done an incredible job over the last decade of really reinvigorating that Sonic the Hedgehog IP. But at the same time, we're trying to educate them on, mobile free-to-play and how mobile free-to-play marketing works, how user acquisition marketing works, how UA creative testing works, how market testing works, et cetera, et cetera. And then on Angry Birds, we're more flexible. We're much more flexible with the IP. And also what we do with UA creative, we're probably more flexible than what we would do in product. So also the restrictions that we put on, creatively speaking, are different based on on what part of the product or what part of the brand or experience that we're working on. We know that with UA creative, we have to be very flexible. We have to give the creative teams a ton of flexibility. That we have someone at Rovio, a guy called Ben, shout out Ben if you're seeing this, who's our chief creative officer for the Angry Birds brand. And of course, sometimes he sees the stuff we do on UA and he's like, it hurts him a lot. He's like, oh my God, why are you doing that? Right. But he understands, right, that it's a dance. It's about finding the right balance. We try to create some clear limitations for the creative team on the UA side. So that we almost like building them a sandbox, right? So it's not like we're saying, you have to do this, but more around, this is the space for you to play in, and then be as creative as you can within that. But, try not to go outside this kind of safe zone, let's say. So we still want to give them a ton of creativity, a ton of flexibility, et cetera, because it's very important UA creative. But we also, at the same time, also need to sort of keep them within the playground or the sandbox or whatever.
Did you see success when, specifically on UA creative, did you see success on, out of the classic edges of the brand? Meaning
yeah, a ton. And that's kind of one of the things that's always really hard, right? Which is, you use an AI hook, for example, right? As a scroll stopper. That's very much borderline, right? How much does that really have to do with the game? How much does that really have to do with the IP? Pretty much nothing. Yet it performs very well. So that's where we need to sit down. We look at it and say, does it damage the IP or not really? It's, at the end of the day, it's just a hook. Depends what the hook is. For example, unless, I don't have visibility over all the creative we produce, but, the kind of destitute mother freezing in the cold with a baby, those are things that we wouldn't do with the IP. And again, if someone says we've done one, I'm sorry, but I don't think, as far as I know, that we've done those. Because again, it's not something that we feel kind of makes sense, even though probably performance-wise, that works. But the pull the pin stuff back in the day when that was a thing, of course we would try those things. But we'd have to make it. Now the Save the King, that Sort of Dream Games came up with for Royal Match, we've tried that, and some versions of those seem to work with our birds and our characters. Maybe not to the same degree as it probably works for them. But so there's always a little bit of how do we find the right balance between those two spaces?
I think you phrased it perfectly. It's it's a dance that you need to test, you need to, diversify, you need to move, you need to balance, you need to restrict, but then you need more flexibility. It's perfect for dance.
Yeah.
And it's for me, I know that you're a very, very, very product-focused marketing leader.
Yeah.
So I will start with the first question there. Do you take any of this, I don't know, UA creative learnings and provide these insights to the product team, maybe to try and develop this kind of?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's something we've talked about many. We've even tried that a little bit. And generally speaking, the more I talk to people within the game design side, they find it very interesting, right? To say like, hey, can we actually explore things with creative? And then based on that, does that give us learnings for events or live ops, etc.? Or there's like we did, I think a few years ago, we had sort of these mini math games in our UA creative, and I believe some of those mini games ended up in the early funnel of our games, Angry Birds Dream Blast. Can't remember off the top of my head how well those performed in an A/B test. But yeah, we've definitely had that. And I think the more communication there is between the UA team, the UA creative team, and the game design team, the more the more you learn about your players and your players' expectations and why. And one of the things we did a few years ago, so we're a big believer at Rovio in research, in user research, market research, and sort of behavioral research. And one of the things that we really wanted to understand was, why is it that some fake ads that, like let's say we show gameplay that doesn't exist, like a mini game or something.
We built a business out of it.
Yeah.
So I know it.
So why is it that they work so well, right? Because like often the criticism is, hey, you're showing this ad that doesn't represent what's actually in the game. Surely people would churn out once they see that doesn't exist. And so when we actually did some actual qualitative research around that, what we saw was that as long as the fakeness of the ad is to similar motivations, it actually doesn't bother the player, right? So what I mean by that is, like, for example, you might have like a math mini game for a like a puzzle, let's say match 3 game, and you're like, well, why would a math mini game, like this number bigger than the other, kind of like the Fishdoms type of ads or whatever, like why would that work well with like a match 3 game? And it turns out that a lot of people play match 3 games because they feel like they're puzzles that they're solving, and so it makes them feel smart, makes them feel like that they're overcoming problems and solving problems in a kind of in a rhythm. And these little mini math games, when they see them, it kind of triggers the same sort of expectations from a motivation standpoint. So even if it's different, it still triggers the same sort of motivations, and that's where there's still a coherency which kind of works for them. There's probably like a boundary at which, like, if you go too far, it might create certain levels of churn, but yeah. Anyways, advertising, generally speaking, is not super real, right? Like if you look at a McDonald's commercial, Burger King commercial, the hamburgers you see, those beautiful hamburgers you see, like, it doesn't look at all like what you get in the actual restaurant, and also it's because, like, they're gluing each sesame seed, like painting the bun or whatever.
But I think you're looking at user acquisition as a more like a big marketing overview. Think about, like you say, you're doing a lot of research stuff that, like, old advertising have been doing, for years, really learning the users, asking them stuff, understanding the motivation. I think this is the big learning point for everyone that is basically who is listening here, that try to understand the motivations of your users, why they are really playing your game, and take this motivation and try to implement it with different type of concept, mechanics, mini games on a marketing UA creative standpoint, which is, it's very, very hard, very easy to say. But we also saw this, and it's insane that you see totally different mechanic or mini game that just enter the games, and you can't really explain why the CPI is lower and the retention is keeping, like, maintaining the same.
Yeah, but understanding your customer, like you said, like sort of classic marketing. Again, like I got into gaming, and I got into gaming because I wanted to get into marketing, and I got into marketing. And one of the reasons I liked marketing in my courses back in the day was, like, in classic marketing, it is all about understanding, your customer. And, like, if you've seen those, like, the Mad Men 1960s, it's all about, like, will this ad inspire them? Will they make them, will it make, this person smoke that cigarette or whatever, right? Like, it's a lifestyle thing, and they, it's aspirational, whatever. But again, it's like those classic marketing sort of strategies or tactics, especially on the creative side, it wasn't that it was like it wasn't just based purely out of creativity, right? There was a lot of market research that went on back in the day. And I think that's something that today is still super relevant, and not just on the marketing side, on the product side as well. So again, like user research is very important. It has been under my department at Rovio up until about 6 months ago, which we created a new department called Player and Portfolio Excellence, and so we've moved that team under there, and community is under there as well. Customer support's under there as well.
What was behind this decision?
I think one of my colleagues at leadership level, she's really cared about this topic, and she was looking for. She had a role. She used to be a game maker. She ran one of our biggest studios. She then moved to HR and eventually to chief sustainability officer when we were a publicly listed company. Obviously, chief sustainability officer as when we're no longer publicly listed, and we're part of Sega, which all the sustainability stuff is kind of more now part of the Sega group, Sega Sammy group. Not really something for us. I mean, obviously we still do things, but she was looking kind of, I think, for like a new role, and it's a topic that she's cared a lot about. It's something that I've felt that really matters, right? It's like at the end of the day, especially in a much more mature market like we are today, where it's not a super high growth market. You have to do everything you can to hold on to your players and your customers, and retention is still extremely important. So of course UA continues to be extremely important, but retaining your players as well. So thinking of a central sort of unit that can review, can sort of own that, and a lot of those individuals are actually embedded in the game teams, just like in my marketing team. You asked about product. Most of my marketing people are fully embedded in the game teams. Oh, wow. In fact, the reporting lines are no longer now to me; they're now into the GMs of the games, etc. So.
Oh, so instead of okay, I understand. Okay.
Yeah, so like when I joined Rovio 4 years ago, all of marketing sort of like funneled up to me. It was like a pyramid structure, basically. We had some people already embedded into some of the game teams. Some of the UA folks were already embedded. Some of the product marketing people were already embedded, but line management and everything was still very central. And we felt that, in modern mobile game making and running a game as a business, how do you empower someone to run that business if you don't give them accountability and responsibility for marketing? And so the studio heads or GMs or whatever title you want to call, for us it was very important that they didn't only have product ownership, but they had also ownership over the marketing over their game. And so making sure that our big games had a fully dedicated marketing team that was fully dedicated to that game, sat and like worked with the other game folks, and that pretty much everything, all that line management, everything eventually funneled up to the GM. Now, obviously, I still work. So we have marketing directors in those games or heads of marketing. They still like dotted line into me. We still have weeklies or whatever. I still talk to them. I'm ultimately accountable for all the marketing that happens at Rovio. But it's important that, it's important that the GMs feel like they have real accountability and they have real ownership and agency over those things. And I spend a lot of my time actually working with those GMs, basically.
Amazing. And I think, you're taking me back to Mad Men, which I'm watching season 2 now.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. But what you're saying, I think it's super important. I will try to rephrase it. Let me know if I'm wrong with what you mentioned. But you're saying put a lot of effort on research, trying to understand the why behind the stuff that are happening in the game, and mostly about the users. Come up with hypothesis of this is the motivation I want to test.
Yep.
And then the creative part, like UA creative, it can be also a minigames feature. But if you're speaking of marketing, take the UA creative implementation part and look at it as just a testing for this hypothesis. Just make sure that you are highly focused on this hypothesis and everything that you are doing correlate to that. Because what we're seeing a lot in the market, you're doing this kind of spaghetti on the wall because no one knows why creative will work. We will speak about it a bit, but no one knows. So you're trying to do everything without any reasoning behind it. So what you're saying, do deep research, put a lot of efforts there, like in Mad Men when they do a lot of research. Then in the presentation, they speak about what the user should feel. And at the end of the presentation, they show the creative. And the creative, someone can say yes, no, they never fall in love with the creative. It's just the implementation part. So like, don't get emotionally attached to the creative, get emotionally attached to the research part, the motivation. Exactly.
Yeah. And the insight doesn't have to come, just to be very clear, like the insight, and I think most UA creative marketers in the industry do this very well, which is a lot of benchmarking and understanding what's happening in the industry, right? Like everyone copies everyone, et cetera. And that's not just because like people are lazy. It's the opposite. It's because, you know, we're very much looking for what can perform. And so I think the insight can come from, you know, understanding your players, doing research with your players, with your audience, whether that's qualitative or quantitative research. It's looking at the data that you're getting from the networks, from the mediation, from the attribution provider, MMP, and it's looking at your competitors and seeing what's trending and why it's trending, and then it's also understanding the network, right? So like, I think this is mistakes sometimes people make, which is assuming that a creative that works very well on AppLovin is necessarily going to work on Facebook, Instagram Reels. Like, why would that work? I mean, yes, there might be some similarities or some things that you take, but you know, the user behavior is very different. So understanding what that user behavior is, you know, again, hooks are very important in like scroll stopping, right? So if you're on a like TikTok or on a like Instagram or something, or YouTube Shorts or whatever, like of course people are, you know, you need to capture someone's attention very quickly. If it's like rewarded video, like on AppLovin or Unity or something like that, then of course it's more about how do you make sure that the person's not putting their phone down, you know, while they're waiting for the reward, they're actually paying attention to the video, right? And then is there a reason for them to interact with it or whatever? Or is it a playable, like obviously something you guys care a lot about. So
it goes back to research actually, and it's beautiful because you need to research not only your user motivation of the game, you need to understand also the user motivation in the networks. And of course it's different, like you said, between TikTok and AppLovin and etc. But you really need to understand that in order again to have this implementation part, which is creative, but to make sure that is related to your user motivation, to the real user motivation that is watching the ad in the specific network, and the creative should be visually, mechanically, physically touch all of these type of points all together. It's very hard.
I mean, you have like the best marketers, like as I said, for me, the best marketers are people that are highly curious, driven, hardworking, motivated, you know, willing to test, have a lot of you know, are very resilient because you're failing 99% of the time, right? Like, and you have until you figure out something that works, something that scales, something that actually, you know, that actually takes off. And there's a lot that we never really fully understand. Like we work in a very algorithmically driven world. And so a lot of it's black box. A lot of it's trying to use your own common sense, trying to decipher the puzzle. And, you know, and sometimes things scale that you don't understand fully why, right? And other things that you think are going to work really well and they don't. So you need someone that can do all those things, right? And, you know, it's not easy to come by those individuals, but once you do, like, it's really fascinating to speak with people that have that mindset and have that way of working and so forth.
Specifically in UA, one of the, I don't know, the most desired goals is, you know, to find winners in the campaigns.
Yeah. Heroes. We call them heroes.
Yeah, heroes, hero creatives. And of course, no one knows sometimes. Like you can't really know why something will work. You can have theses behind it. And of course, you have zero controllability. Everyone has zero controllability on the algorithm itself. How do you build the system? Not speaking about tech system, but even systematic workflow that enable you to find consistently new hero creatives?
That's a great question, and probably there's other folks on my team that would give a better answer than I do because I'm less in the weeds. You know,
but
and I trust a lot of them.
High level,
but from a high level perspective, it comes back to what we're saying, which is, you know, the constant curiosity, have a level of structure in your process, have a structure that is tailored to your different networks, have highly creative individuals who also understand performance metrics to a degree that is reasonable, right? They don't need to be extremely deep into the numbers, but they need to understand, generally speaking, and have to care. So we're blessed that we have some great creative leads on the UA side Here in Barcelona, we have a guy called Talis, and Helsinki, we have another guy called Jared, which you
Jared, we say hi. I love you a lot. We love you.
You've worked, I believe, with him,
Yeah.
and then and Sarah in Turkey, and these three individuals are, again, these really talented guys who are extremely creative, but are also very driven by insight and numbers as well. And so finding that, and they have a very structured process in kind of learning and testing and trying to understand, et cetera. So even in a world where you don't fully control everything, and you don't have your assumptions don't always come across as performing, because again, things are not always under our control. The more you can structure that process, but you can also keep a very high level of creativity. Like I was actually talking to Jared before this about sort of, working with you guys, and he was saying, like, production wise, it's really interesting how we work at AI, but still there's that level of human creative insight that's still super important, right? And I think that's really what it's about, right? It's how do you take that deep sort of puzzle solving, which can be working with networks, working algorithms, working with KPIs, et cetera, but at the same time keep that really high level of creativity and that insight that you understand your player, understand the player motivations, understand your game very well, understand the genre very well, understand your competitors very well. So yeah.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so let's do a stop and play a game.
Sure.
We have here cards. You know it from a previous.
Yeah, I saw one of your podcasts already.
So I don't know what will come up, but
I've been
watch
scared.
out. Watch out. So feel free to choose one. And let's see. We know everything that if something is bad, you can blame Daniela, our brand and content lead, Daniela. Sorry for that.
Yeah.
Choose one.
Right,
read the question.
Wow.
Let's see. Let's see.
A bit nervous because I saw one of your podcasts
yesterday. It was tough. It was tough.
All right. I'll randomly choose one of these. All right. So I'm supposed to read it myself.
Yes.
If your career were a movie, what would the title be? I made a joke. I actually got a question like this at Rovio Con. I made a joke saying The Hangover.
One of the best movies of all
and the
time.
reason, I'm people who know me know that I like to have a good time, and and then it's like a little bit of trying to like figure out how did I get here. No, what would it be? What would the title be? That's a great question. Wow, if your career were a movie, what would the title be? Now I have to be creative as well.
We can call Jared.
No, this is a good one. I really want to make sure I think properly. I would say something like going from one stop to the next, or something like that. There's probably a more creative way of saying that. The train station, or the suitcase, or something like that. But the reality is, my career has been one of, you mentioned it before. I've been in many gaming companies. So I've had the blessing to work with a lot of talented people across a lot of different incredible gaming companies with a lot of different incredible products. I've worked in Spain. I've worked in Sweden, in Scotland, in Finland. Obviously a lot of business travel to other parts of the world. Worked with a lot of international people. So yeah, maybe like the suitcase or something like that, because I feel like I'm constantly traveling, constantly moving from one project to another, learning, building experiences, getting the stamps in the passport. So yeah, that's I would say that's kind of like, and it's funny. I reflect now 20 years into this career. As I said earlier, my father was a diplomat. He was a diplomat for the Spanish government. So as a kid, we moved a lot. I was kind of nomadic anyways because of his job. And one of the things that's really interesting when you're the son of a diplomat or of a military person, for example, often you end up living in very international communities. So as an example, when we lived in Brussels, he was working at NATO. Basically everyone that we met were people from different parts of NATO countries. And so, your friends are maybe American, Russian, sorry, not Russian, sorry, not Russian, but Polish or Belgian or, Italian, French, whatever, Irish. but also, also be in situations with people from other parts of the world, Japan, Russia, Israel, Africa, Latin America, etc. But what I found really interesting about the gaming community is that I've pretty much found the same type of environment. So it's completely different industry, has nothing to do with sort of the geopolitics or things like that. Yet, right now you guys are Israeli. I've worked for years with lots of Israelis, have great Israeli friends. I have friends in the US. I have friends all over Europe, met incredibly interesting people in Asia, Latin America, etc., Brazil. We work for now a Japanese company, Sega's Japanese company, so our executives at the highest level are Japanese. So it's an incredible international environment, and so maybe the suitcase.
The suitcase, you nailed it. I must say, no, it was amazing. Do you want another one, or
let's do one more. Let's do one more.
The suitcase.
But
I think you won the competition. You won it.
What part of your job looks easy from the outside but really isn't? Ooh, that's a good one. What part of your job looks really easy from the outside but really isn't? I would say success. The reality is that as I said, like 99% of the time you're failing. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and those people that are very active on LinkedIn.
You are the most nice guy on LinkedIn.
Oh, thank you.
I must say, all of your wishes of Happy New Year, man. I just watched it. No, I'm super. Because sometimes LinkedIn can be ruthless. Like people can be, oh my god.
Yeah, people can be.
It's so important to provide some joy.
As I said, I've been 20 years in the industry. Like, only build bridges, never burn them. I think that, like, often though, like on LinkedIn or social media or whatever, people like to talk about the successes of myself as well, right? We very rarely talk about our failures. The reality is, sometimes it's hard to get up in the morning when you're like, oh my god, the game is down, it's not growing. Like, I've been, you're working your tail off. You're trying to motivate your team. The team itself is, really working hard. They're passionate. They care. And and if the game's declining and it's not working, there's so many reasons why that could be happening. But, especially in marketing, our whole expectation is to help grow the business, right? And grow the audience and grow. And so when that's not working, and there's, like, as I said, there's a million reasons why that can be, it can be demoralizing sometimes, and that's why I say resilience is so important in this industry, and especially in marketing. But I would say the same thing goes for product as well. Like, you need to have a ton of resilience because it's not always up and to the right. Like, take an example that's not even one of my projects, but everyone loves to talk about, Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go is an incredible success. Scopely's biggest success ever. Really, Scopely was already on the map, and Monopoly Go just took them to legendary status, right? If you look at the numbers, they're still incredibly successful, but they're down from where they were, at their peak. And so, their bonuses are probably tied to growth. And so, like, for them to, and probably their targets are really ambitious because they've hit some very incredible numbers in the past. And, like, if you look at the Supercell guys as well, like, Brawl Stars 2.5 years ago was doing really, really poorly. And then about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, they had a 10x growth, incredible moment. And now they're down a little bit, and now Clash Royale, lucky for Supercell, it's both those games. Both those games are there under their portfolio, but now Clash Royale is like the trending game that, but like, imagine that emotional roller coaster ride for the people that work on those projects, right? So people only really ever see sort of the good moments, but the reality is the work, the grind, everything. I mean, you guys know this by building a company yourselves, right? Like, it's great when you say, I raised a bunch of money or whatever, but in reality, it's like, I got a client, I lost a client,
it's painful.
I raised money, but how many people said no?
Yeah, no, I think I can really relate to that, and it's really important also because I see actually more people, mostly the startup founders, are sharing more failures. But also, it's a bit a weird trend, and maybe like the world's politics, like everything is getting less to the center and more to the edges. So you see people that are, showing very edge cases of success without explaining, what's behind the hood, under the hood and stuff like that. Or, I don't know, I don't want to call it like people that are depressed, but failures and learnings that everyone can learn from. I really love, of course, the failing part, because it's really enable you to learn from other, which for me is one part of wisdom, not learning by your own mistake, by learning by other mistakes. And when people sharing mistakes, I think it's really helping to the entire industry. And of course, it's never fun to speak about what's wrong. It's never fun.
Yeah. One of the things I like most about our industry is how well networked and how open people are to discussing things. So yes, maybe on LinkedIn it's kind of more showboating or it's maybe more talking about people's successes or whatever. But on podcasts like these, people do go deeper, and so you have longer form conversations where people can go into more nuanced conversations. But then I think what's really interesting is when you go to events. I try to go to lots of events, sometimes because they want me as a speaker, but more importantly, I like to go because it's a way where I can connect with this village called mobile gaming. And I think that's where you have real conversations with people, whether that's over a beer, over a coffee, or over a meal. That's where, or when you bump into somebody or whatever, that's where you actually have a real conversation about things, and that's where you learn about the reality of stuff. And all of us that are actually there in the trenches or trying to, in my case nowadays, manage the battlefield, like it's how brutal and how bloody it can actually be. And so that's when you have conversations with people, you try to get insight from them. But no one's really trying to bullshit each other, because there's no way you can bullshit someone. Like, everyone knows how hard it is and how it's not like, and sometimes sometimes things work well and it's very serendipitous. So even like, that's the other thing I like, is that when you actually talk to people in these moments, they're quite humble about, saying how serendipitous some of these things are. Like, it's not like I now have the perfect formula for growth, because if that was the case, they would make a new game and have a great success, and then make another game and have a great success. And it's very rare to see companies that can do multiple hits. Like, it's super, super hard. So
I think mobile games is one of the most the collaboration with mobile games leaders, and I think in marketing even specifically, people are very open to each other. They're, of course, not sharing secrets, but they speak a lot, they consult a lot. It's actually very beautiful to see, because I can say from my side, from the B2B perspective, you will speak, I think, with your competitors, but because the customer is like, it's you.
Shared customer,
So you can speak with the customer. Here in games, like in mobile games, you don't really know the customer, like the person itself. So it's easier to discuss, even if you are both in the match 3 genre, you are fighting on the same acquisition channels, but it just, I don't know, easier. And it's from my side, it's very fun to see. Like, people in the industry, I must say to you, really love each other. It really seems like they are collaborating, they love each other, they're happy to see each other, they're networking for real, not for bullshit reasons.
I think in a lot of ways, it's what keeps me in the industry, right? Is the people that you run into, the people you meet. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to PGC London next week and looking forward to seeing a lot of people again, and it's sometimes it's the same faces you see in all the same events and so forth. But like, I think that's great. It's like you build this kinship and you build this trust, and you can, and it's very useful, right? Because like, it's not just then, it's like, hey, I really want to understand how something's working. You can call them up, WhatsApp them or do a video call and ask them. Obviously there's certain things they'll never share just because, it's private data or it's too sensitive information, but they'll still give you a hint of like how they're seeing things or what they're seeing. Like, let's say for example, we talk a lot about UA in this conversation. So using UA as an example, there'll be moments where like all of a sudden your performance is going down. You're like, okay, what the hell's going on? You look at a couple games in your own portfolio and you see it's happening. So pick up the phone, call someone, and be like, hey, are you seeing something similar? And someone's like, yeah, we're seeing the same thing. Or someone's like, no, I'm fine. Ours is great. So that kind of helps you think about, okay, now what do I need? How do I, when I'm trying to understand what the problem is, I can now solve it better by being able to talk to others, for example. So
it's amazing. So pour us some water and let's speak maybe more about the future of mobile games.
Sure. Thanks.
So the future of mobile games includes 3 topics of discussion. One, let's speak about APAC, China.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to win.
So we'll speak about that. Let's speak about the UA role in the upcoming few years, because it's going to change a lot. And lastly, about AI.
Love it. Three great topics.
Yeah. So let's start with APAC. What is your take on what is happening there?
Look, it's incredible. Like, they are winning, and I don't see a world where they're not going to continue to win.
Oh my God.
And what I mean by that is, I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, so first of all, the market, as it matures, becomes more of a winner takes all market. So especially in the world of UA, what you see is that it's the games with the highest LTV and the best creative performance, best sort of CPI to LTV ratio are the ones that can outbid everybody. And the more sophisticated teams, the more sophisticated data you have, the more sort of, obviously the more confidence you can have in how much you bid. And basically it's an auction, right? UA is an auction. And so those that win the auctions, they get the best players. The best players give them the most revenue. They get more revenue. They can invest more in creative. They can invest more in teams. I was speaking to one of the CMOs. I won't mention, but really great guy, CMO of a big Chinese company that's doing very, very well. And he was saying that he has 300 people building creative. He's got game designers and game developers creating playables. Like, how do you compete with that, right? Like in the West. And so that's one piece, right? Is just the sheer size of their teams, some of the successes they're having. And I think a couple other things I want to mention about that is that I think historically the Chinese, as an example, were very good at copying, but they kind of struggled with creativity. But that's not the case anymore. Now they're really good at copying, but they're also really good at being creative, and they're really good at analyzing. They're really good at understanding how to run a machine, and like UA or like product development, etc. So on that side, they've really sort of stepped up, and they're very driven by success, and their ego's low, right? So that actually makes them very, very successful. And then on top of that, I'd say the other thing, and this is maybe more of like a geopolitical thing, is we struggle to have access to their market, and the Chinese market is the biggest, if not one of the biggest markets in gaming and mobile gaming. And the fact that, we have to go with a partner, that we have to get a license, it's really hard to do that, means we don't have access to that market, or or it takes a lot of a heavy lift to get access to the market. And even when we do, we have to share the benefits with a partner there, whereby they have full access to our markets, our Western markets. And they understand the West, right? Which is, we struggle to understand their market, A, because we don't have access, and B, because we just culturally don't understand it as much. They understand the Western market very, very well. So they're able to be very successful in their own markets with limited competition. They obviously have a lot of competition of their own, but it's less competitive than the Western market. And then a lot of that success can breed value for them to then reinvest in conquering the West. And because they are humble and they're motivated and ambitious, they know how to understand and really understand the West. I'm speaking mainly about the Chinese developers. I think obviously you have things like Vietnam now and things like that, which are very interesting. Something to keep an eye out. Some people call Vietnam like the new Turkey. We'll see. Japan's a whole different story.
Turkey is still Turkey.
Turkey's incredible. Turkey's amazing.
Insane.
Yeah.
In
Turkey's
the last,
great.
I think, few years, every year it's incredible.
Yeah, hardworking, very business mindset, creative people, hungry, highly competitive, which is something I think you guys in Israel do very well as well. Is
I think
a very highly competitive culture.
Winning us. They're winning us. Turkey is winning us.
Yeah. So in Western Europe and in the Nordics, I think we sometimes rest on our laurels, and that's a problem. And I think we have to be very careful because Turkey and then APAC, etc., might start to eat our lunch. They kind of already are. So we have to. I think it's a wake up call for us as well.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Let's speak about the UA role in the future. I will divide this question maybe with two pieces of information. One,
sure.
As you know, the UA management part is getting less and less control because automation of the campaigns and the networks, meaning that, today the only thing you have control of is the creative and, some configurations. But let's assume that this part, according to the CEOs, Adam, Zuckerberg, visions, that is even going to be, you will have less control. So this one piece of information. And the second part, of course, is AI. So how do you think the role of UA will shape in the upcoming 3 years?
That's a great question. So this whole topic of automation, et cetera, has been there for many, many years. I think Google was one of the first ones where it started to feel much like a black box. And I remember
Also,
people.
Facebook AAA.
Yeah,
campaign when
Facebook,
it
exactly.
started.
AAA campaigns, exactly. And so there was always this sort of feeling of from the UA managers of, oh, I'm losing control. And a lot of people that are actually like UA campaign managers, they originally got it. I don't know nowadays if it's the same case, but at least back then, a lot of people that got into it was because they really liked being in the weeds. Like that's not my case at all. But like these are people that, kind of like air traffic controllers. They really liked really being there and looking at the numbers like spreadsheets, optimizing campaigns, etc. And so for them, that was a change, but they've adapted. And yes, a lot like whether it's AppLovin or Google, even Meta, TikTok, etc. A lot of these are very algorithmically driven today, and you'd say almost all networks are like that nowadays. Now that doesn't mean that there isn't still a lot of work that's being done by the UA managers and campaign managers. And again, a lot of it is just trying different type of campaign types, trying different bids, trying different networks, building those relationships with the network partners, making sure their campaign setup makes sense, kind of going through the checklist of, are we doing this the right way? And then, of course, the whole creative side of things. Yes, potentially there's a world in which creative becomes very automated as well. I know you guys are really focused on that. And I think that there's still, coming back to what I was saying earlier, I think there's some classic things about marketing that I believe will continue for many, many years. And that is understand your player, understand, uncover insight, and then leverage that insight into new things that you try. And, maybe there's a world where human interaction is like, it's completely fully automated. I don't know. But I think that at least in the next 3 years, if not maybe the next 5 years, I still think that level of creativity and human input is still going to be extremely important. It's just that how that is will be constantly evolving and what that actually means. But ultimately, it's like understand your players, understand motivations, uncover insights, look at the market, look at opportunities, and try different things, be creative, and then, work with the machine as your friend rather than as a competitor, basically.
It's like being like the uncovering insights, the understanding to do the research properly. Like I imagine a world that the UA part, okay, because you are working with algorithms. So the question is, what you feed the algorithm.
Exactly.
And yeah, maybe the position will require more diverse input of data points and more deep research to uncover really hidden insights and stuff.
Yeah, and then working with product as well, right? So like, what's that onboarding like? How do you tailor the experience based on where your players are coming from? What can you learn about your players that will feed both back into the machine, but also into once they kind of come into the product as well. And so like, I have no fear that these folks have a incredibly long career ahead of them. It's just that I think if anything that mobile gaming has taught us, and as I said, I've been here since 2013, I've been in gaming since 2006, like it's constantly evolving. So yeah, change is inevitable, but progress is your choice. Progress is your choice, basically.
Amazing.
Yeah.
As the last part of the conversation, let's speak a bit about AI. We don't need to, to only speak about AI in marketing, but in general, because you are very connected to the product as well. What do you think? Where is the main areas do you think AI will impact mobile games in 2026?
Well, first of all, AI is like electricity, right? And what I mean by that is it's, if electricity in the late 19th century, you maybe people were scared of it, but at the end of the day, it's here to stay, right? or cars versus horses or things like that, right? Like, I think it's such a big tidal wave that you can't fight it, or you shouldn't fight it. And if your mindset is to kind of resist it, I think you are going to be swept up by that tidal wave. So you want to be surfing the wave and not being drowned by the wave. And that's kind of my general mindset that I want to let my teams know. And so, for example, when we look at OKRs or objectives, et cetera, we try to make sure that there's like AI driven KPIs because it's, as I said, I need people.
What do you mean
to
AI
feel-
driven? Like
So like just things that are related to the AI topic, right?
Oh, wow.
So automation or AI
Really?
or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we want to, at least at the more senior level,
Yeah.
then how those trickle down to individuals. That would be a case by case basis, but at least like the director levels, et cetera, I make sure that in their OKRs they have something AI related, unless for some specific reason it's not relevant, right? But we have a small team now, that we just created, or we transformed from another bigger
Assembled.
team, and they're very much focused on what we call creative technology and tools, where AI is kind of the fundamental sort of pillar that they work around. And so a lot of that is testing, exploring, but their goal is not to learn and make other people use. It's more about how they can help evangelize. So yes, they might do some of the testing, they might look for early insights and things like that, but ultimately what they're really meant to do is work directly with the actual individuals and help them. Let's call them surfing instructors, basically. If we're going back to the metaphor of, or the analogy of surfing the tidal wave of AI, it's kind of the same thing. Now, to answer your question specifically, because I also want to make sure I answer, I think obviously creative, 100%. I think creative, obviously we struggle a little bit on our end because we have an IP, and so we have to be very careful about how the AI treats our IP, especially our characters. And then, coming back to the question about community, we have an Angry Birds community that is extremely vocal. We call them a brand community, so they're not necessarily fans of any specific game. They're just very strong fans of the IP itself. And when we've done some not so great things with AI creative, with characters, they will call us out on it and they will shame us.
Wow, really?
Yeah, very much so. Online, and it's not great.
Like
right?
every fan. When
Yeah,
you see something.
and so exactly right, and they're like, how is it possible that we care more about the IP than Rovio does? And and it hurts when you hear that, and it kind of but it's good. They're like they're wake up call sometimes, and so it means we like, again, the fact that we have an IP, we have to be a little bit more conservative when it comes to how we use AI in certain areas, especially about how we use it around character art and things like that. And so that's why we're trying to train our own models with our own character art and things like that. So there's also a tech team working on that type of stuff. And then I think with product, I mean, well, first of all, coming back to marketing, on the UA side, we've been using automation for many, many years. And then even internally in terms of prediction, LTV prediction algorithms and things like that, right? ROAS prediction, et cetera. So and now we're actually starting to look at campaign automation as well through a thing, what we call CAMU, which is an internal word. But basically it's campaign automation, kind of machine learning. And then, with product, again, developing levels, developing art, difficulty balancing, so really tailoring the level of difficulty, et cetera. I think that's where AI is going to be very interesting. And I think in the mid to longer term, I think the experiences themselves, in terms of the creative experiences, I think eventually we'll get there. But I think there's still a little bit away. And then, player support, player support automation, rather than going through a FAQ, actually having like a real human-like conversation with someone. But instead of talking to an agent, you're first talking to an AI, and only if it gets too complicated for the AI do you then go and talk to the agent or whatever. So,
interesting.
I think
it seems like you are very, very advanced in Rovio, I must say, compared to other company in terms of AI.
I don't know. I mean,
I can say.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to other companies as well. I try to understand what's happening there. Supercell did a great talk at RovioCon about what they're doing on the AI space, and they're, it's fantastic what they're doing. So I would say there's a lot of companies. So one of the cool things about mobile games is that we are culturally, as an industry, we're very curious, and we're always. It's been always very competitive. So even if, now we're at a mature stage where growth is much harder than it used to be, but growth has never been easy. And so we've always been a hyper competitive industry. So we've always been looking for that edge, and that kind of creates this culture of A, bringing people into the industry that have that mindset, and then B, it's like, it also sort of just to survive and to succeed, you have to have that mindset of, you said it earlier, which is like, don't get too attached, like be more curious, don't attach personally to things. Let your curiosity and your desire for success and insight drive how you make certain decisions. And so I think we've been, we got hit by ATT, for example. That was tough, right? That was a big thing that we had to figure out. Right. And it's not like Apple didn't like help us with that. Right. Like, like Apple was like, oh, it's coming. And we're like, when is it coming? Well, we'll let you know. And then it's like, and then delayed it a bit, but they never really kind of helped us figure that out. And so as an industry, we had to figure that out. And that's just one example. And I can tell you 3 or 4 other examples where we got hit by massive changes. So I think this industry has always been very ready to adopt change. And so that's why, yes, maybe it looks like at Rovio we're more advanced, but I bet if you talk to most of the gaming companies, they're actually caring about AI quite a bit. And you have a great list of clients, beautiful logos on your website. So I know there's a lot of companies out there that really care about the topic, or at least are worth exploring it. So
amazing. Luis, as the last question, something personal.
Sure.
Can you maybe share with us a very like moment that you remember from your career that, I don't know, changed your mindset, eliminated some biases in your mind, enable you to think different? A specific moment that you remember that you're saying to yourself, man, it changed me.
Wow. That's a good question. Wasn't ready for that one.
I wasn't as well. It just came out.
No, I think it's a great question. I mean, it's happened all the time, always, but I'm trying to think if there's something very, very specific that really changed my mind about something. This is probably not that interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's not interesting, but it's real. Which was early in my experience in mobile gaming. So actually, let me start by saying that, as I said, I started my career in console gaming, and AAA console gaming is historically very different than mobile free to play. Nowadays it's maybe getting more similar, but back then it was very, very different. And in fact, when I moved from AAA console and I told people I was going to mobile free to play, people were like, why would you do that? Like, that sounds lame. Like, that's like going from like, Premier League to second division. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's sort of how people thought of it in the console space at the time. And one of the things that I was really sort of surprised about when I moved into mobile free to play, I didn't even know this, was how data driven things were, and how much more insight you could get about things, and how you could make decisions with a lot more, with a lot of testing and a lot of and really caring about numbers, and et cetera. AAA console at the time was much more like, you could say, is almost like the movie industry in terms of it's all about your day one sales and it's about building hype, et cetera. Where like, with mobile, it's more about like running a machine. Anyways, the point being is, one of the games that we released early in my career in Gameloft was a game called Asphalt Overdrive. And it was like a really cool kind of game. So Asphalt's a great franchise if you've ever played it. It's racing, arcade racing game, etc. Asphalt 8 at the time was the game that I was working on that was performing very well. Then they put out Asphalt 9, which is a great game. But this was a new game that we were developing called Asphalt Overdrive, which instead of being on landscape was going to be portraits. So it was more casual. It was kind of like a runner in terms of you would like swipe different lanes, and had this really cool 80s Miami vibe sort of thing. So from a marketing standpoint, as I said at the time, marketing was very much about getting featuring, etc. And so we, really worked on our pitch. We worked on the game design and everything to make it really exciting, the artwork and the marketing, etc. We got incredible featuring. We had, few million installs in the first couple days for free in a way because of the featuring. And we lost all of it in like a few days because the game was just retained so poorly. And like, that was the moment to me, was like, oh my God, it's all about retention. And, nowadays everyone just considers that as like just the norm. That's just the rule. But back then, I think it was like, it wasn't as obvious, or at least it wasn't as obvious to me and some of other folks, like how important, before you really try to push a game, how important retention is. Like, so yeah, I know most people know that that's sort of that's kind of the bread and butter of game making nowadays, is to have really strong retention, and eventually monetization, etc. But yeah, at the time it was kind of like, oh, we got all these installs and now we have no players left. Like, what happened? Like, yeah, people played for a day and then they're like, oh, that's fun, but you know, so
It's a
yeah, so
tough moment, but yeah.
yeah,
Luis, thank you very, very much. I must say it was amazing, and thank you for sharing with us your truth about mobile games, marketing, life, everything. Really, it was amazing. And again, thank you. And I believe that everyone that listened to that or watched that, Jared, you were mentioned a few times here, but I assume that everyone that listened to that really enjoyed, and you touched points that I never heard about, which is truly amazing. So thank you.
yeah. Thanks for having me, and also shout out to everyone on my team because they're the ones that do all the hard work every day. So
Thank you, Luis.
yeah.